Now, earlier this year, Nigerians slammed the price hike in subscription rates of pay TV packages by DStv and GOtv, forcing the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, the FCCPC, to intervene. However, a federal high court in Abuja has upheld the hike in DStv and GOtv subscription rates following a suit filed by MultiChoice Nigeria Limited against the FCCPC. Delivering judgment, Justice James Omotosho ruled that the suit constituted an abuse of court process, as similar proceedings were already pending in Lagos State. Justice Omotosho noted that while the FCCPC has investigative powers under its Establishing Act, it lacks the authority to fix or suspend prices unless specifically delegated by the President through a gazetted instrument. Well, joining us on the show to discuss this latest ruling by the court is Liboris Oshoma, a lawyer. Good morning and welcome to the morning show.
Good morning.
Always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you.
Okay. His Lordship Justice James Omotosho was saying that yes, FCCPC, the Federal Consumer and Competition Protection Commission, has no powers to fix prices. But however, the President of Nigeria has powers under Section 88 of the FCCPC Act to fix prices in a regulated industry. Now, is the this pay-per-view, right?
Yes.
Pay-per-view TV, market. Is it not a regulated industry? Because if it says, okay, the FCCPC cannot regulate prices, how about the President? And why do some people think that this is a case of double standards, political victimization, abuse of regulation, and all that? Yeah, I need to get something clear in that regard.
In answering that question, let me lay a foundation here.
Because there is no market that is not regulated. Okay. We need to understand that, especially for consumers. There's something that need to protect the consumer. But in protecting the consumers, the court also agreed that your regulations should apply overboard and not specific. You don't target particular companies or individuals and then you regulate and then leave others. And so, also, it is a country where the government had come out to say, you know what, let the forces of market demand and supply determine the price of even a product that they could regulate, petroleum products. Before now, even forest trading in Nigeria was regulated by government. But government came and said, look, no, let market forces determine the price. And also, recently, we were complaining about Band A, Band B, Band C, bandits. The government has said, you know what, let's have appropriate pricing for electricity so that we can attract investors. So this is a government, in one hand, you're saying we don't want to regulate prices, even though by provisions of Section 88, to protect the consumer, the president has the right to fix prices. Not just for the pay-per-view TV, but, it's a broad power. But you have left areas that you ought to regulate and then now go to private businesses that you should look at unfair business trading and not just look at, why are you fixing this price? Why are you increasing price? Also, the cost of doing business in Nigeria has increased, has tripled. So if businesses in Nigeria must thrive, must be sustainable, if you want to attract investors. I was listening to Rotus just now, the African CEOs, and you're talking about private businesses thriving. You don't sit down to say, look, you can't increase your price. Because if I want to fix rent, Lagos State, for example, came and said, look, rent, you can't increase above a certain limit. But here, the landlord will tell you, go rent Lagos State own. Because for me, this is my own. So all of this is happening because government has not been able to put investment in the right place that will grow competition. But when the investment is not there and then the cost of doing business is also high here, and at the same time you want somebody to do business in your country and you're also fixing price that is not commensurate with the cost of doing business, it's like giving with one hand and taking with another. So that's why I agree with the judgment of Justice Omotosho that yes, you have the power to investigate, but under this law, you have no power to fix prices. And even though this, Section 88 empowers the president to so do, there is no gazette before me that empowers you to fix price. And also, asking them not to fix price pending investigation is also amount to, a breach of their right to fair hearing. And I completely agree with him.
Do you see the possibility of the FCCPC going on appeal? And if they so choose to do you think it will be a futile exercise?
It's now begin to, there's need to draw a distinction between prosecution and persecution. Now, the court had ruled, appealing, and there is a fatal error here. And that error is that you do not even have the powers to fix price. It is only the president that can so do. Except you disagree that you have the powers to fix price. They also agree that they do not have that power to fix prices. And so if you don't have the power to fix prices, and why then, what are you appealing? So that's where the big question is. So what are you appealing? And then also other businesses will be watching how you deal with it. And then I really don't want to go deep into how these people operate their business. But if you look at the prices, they are graduated. You have some for 2,000, you have bouquet for 4,000, you have the one for 16,000. And that was what the judge said. It is not a compulsory, business.
It's not an essential
service. It's not an essential service. People can do without it. There are so many people since internet came who decided, you know what, I don't want to do. A lot of people now watch movies on YouTube. As we're here now, there are so many people abroad who are watching this program on YouTube.
So what about the law of unintended consequences? Because in doing so, in saying, well, we can't regulate, we can't really do anything, we can just investigate, we're also saying that monopolistic practices can thrive unchallenged. How does one counter that and balance that within the framework of the Constitution?
In regulating, you can investigate sharp practices, you can investigate unfair business dealing, you can also investigate dual prices, antitrust. You can investigate all of this. But now, you are not the one running the business. Now wanting to fix a price for somebody, for a business that is not essential, that people can do without. What you need to do is to create an environment where competition will thrive. So once there is competition, certainly people will have alternative. But
so you're saying FCCPC basically challenged the wrong thing?
Yes, they are challenging the wrong thing. So government should provide an enabling environment where competition will thrive. There were other paid TV in Nigeria. What led to their deaths? Government is not looking at all of those angles. And so the ones that are existing, you say, no, you must not, charge beyond a particular price. And you also, before you even fix prices for people, you need to even investigate the indices for fixing prices. That's why we talk about, a business model. And there was a time in this country where, before the 1993 election, prices of milk, but then we didn't have this sachet milk and all of it. Was just, canned milk. But because of prices, producers decided to segment the market. So you segment the market and ensure that everybody gets, and that's the same thing they do. So in this case, nobody wants a monopoly. But since you don't want, and because monopoly would lead to unfair advantage. But so what you do, you ensure you create an environment where monopoly will not thrive, where other people can come into the business. If it was a situation of, this pay TV, not wanting other persons to come into the business, then you can now say, yes, the Federal Consumer Protection Council has a right to stop that. But asking them not to fix their price, if I have my property now and I want to fix rent, do they regulate rent for tenants in Nigeria? No, the answer is no. And people are crying, fuel price is going up and all of that. What happens is now you have Dangote, so there's competition. So people will certainly, nobody will be looking at making 100% profit margin. You now want to look at how do we ensure that we, stay above water. But if you create an environment where it is just one business, and now also what price would do, if they increase the price, people can decide to say, you know what, I can't pay for this. And so it is their business, it is their model, it is their customers that would go, not, you know. So when you're complaining for a service you can do without, and then you go to consumer protection say, no, you shouldn't increase price for a service I can do without. For me, it's an unfair practice on the part of the consumer protection.
I mean, we can all agree that consumers are important and
Yes.
they do deserve to be represented.
Yes.
And that's the work the FCCPC tends to do here.
Yes,
In
yes.
this situation, you are on the side of the courts where you feel as though they've essentially overstepped their bounds, really. But I do want to ask you, because you've hinted on this already, you know, the prospect of monopoly, and also I do want to ask you what your thoughts are on, you know, collusion, for example, like economic collusion, like many people in one market agreeing to set a price at this level. And naturally, you can expect that consumers have the right to say, well, I actually don't think that this is fair. Sure, the good or the service in question is not a good that, like you've mentioned, is something that you can do without. But people also have the ability to choose what they'd like to use for entertainment. If we can say that people have been complaining about the telecoms tariff hikes, that they're paying so much for so little when it comes to internet, that also affects their ability to seek an alternative. You mentioned YouTube, but if they're paying more for less data, for example, then it's also going to be a situation where they feel as though they're being priced out of entertainment. So while entertainment isn't a, I can't remember the name of the goods that, a necessity essentially, I do think that, or rather my question to you is, don't you think that the FCCPC should be given some leeway to protect the consumer in all arenas?
No, nobody is saying they shouldn't protect the consumer, because justice is a two-way traffic. You know, what is justice to the consumer also? The one where you're looking at justice to the consumer, and also justice to the man who's putting his business, his money in the business. So you must look at justice on a two-way. That's why the court looked at both and said, look, you know, somebody has invested money in a business. The essence of investment is to make profit. It's not a charitable organization. But at the same time, you have paid for a service, you want that service, you know, to be rendered. It's not a question of paying for a service now and that service is not rendered. You're complaining about the price. And the court is saying, no, if you cannot afford it, leave it.
Okay, quickly. We have less than a minute to go. Now, Babatunde Urukera, who was in charge of the FCCPC before now, said pay per view TV is not an essential service. Those who cannot do pay-per-view, they can go and watch regular television in any case. But let me ask you, we used to have a Price Control Act of 1977, and we used to have a pricing board of control. What happened to that board? You
know, when we had all of those price control, we had marketing boards. Marketing boards were when they were off-takers, so that you don't produce, at the end of the day, there are no off-takers. So those price control acts were set up